People definitely are well-meaning when they say this, especially in church and stuff like that, of just being like, oh, well, the Lord has completely healed him of his cancer. And do I believe that the Lord can completely heal anything? 100%. God is not a God to be put in a box. He definitely is a great physician and a God of miracles. However, I also am aware that death is something that we face on this side of eternity every single day. I can't put my hope in a miracle and not in the Lord. And it just was like, I know so many strong believers who definitely prayed for healing, but I feel like if we're expecting life to be easy and if we're expecting life to be painless, that's not what Jesus even told us was going to happen with the Christian life.
Welcome to the Inheritance of Hope podcast. Every day, 562 children lose a parent to terminal illness. They shouldn't have to face that alone. You can pretend to avoid the painful realities of illness, grief, and death, or you can deal with the real stuff in caring community. On the podcast, people in Inheritance of Hope's community share raw, personal stories of pain, trials, and the shadow of death, which are also stories of joy in terminal illness. Find more Inheritance of Hope community at inheritanceofhope.org. Hey all, welcome to the Inheritance of Hope podcast. My name is Ellie and I'll be your host today. And I'm joined with a really special guest that I think we will all learn a lot from. And she just is such a sweet soul. So I'm really excited to have her on. Abigail, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Abigail, and I am currently living in Lynchburg, Virginia with my husband. And I'm kind of in the middle of a few different things, but currently, I'm doing insurance authorizations for diagnostic imaging, which is not what I went to school for, but I love it. So it's been fun. But yeah.
Nice. What did you go to school for?
I went to school actually for finance. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So maybe not what you were initially intending, but cool that you like it.
Yeah. No, definitely not what I was looking for at all. But it was the only full-time job I could get out of school. So I was like, well, we'll just see where the Lord goes with this. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It will be a learning experience one way or another,
Yep.
and get some new odd experience on your resume, and that's great.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And you recently got married, right?
Yes, I did. I got married on December 14th of last year. So we just hit the 5-month mark. So
yeah, that's so exciting because I still have to, I think, update your contact in my phone or, everything because I still have your last name, your maiden name.
Yeah.
Listed everywhere. But yes. Okay. So tell us a bit about your story, your family's experience with illness and what that has looked like.
Yeah. So my story with illness is that my dad, back in 2015, was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which for people who don't know what that is the most aggressive type of brain cancer. And I was 11 at the time. And that was a very tricky thing to navigate as an 11-year-old, especially since I was the oldest of 6 kids at that point. So I was 11, and then the youngest was, let me do the math, 2. And I just remember just how everything in my life turned upside down from that first phone call, because we had no indicators that he was sick or had a brain tumor or anything until he had a grand mal seizure at a work lunch. And they took him to the hospital and they did a CT scan, found a lemon-sized tumor on his left frontal lobe. And then I think a few days later they did the biopsy and found out that it was cancer. We didn't know what kind of cancer at the time, but it definitely was cancer, and it was stage 4 glioblastoma. And I would say it was weird because, me and my siblings were homeschooled, and I was even homeschooled all the way through high school until I went to college. And so it was weird my mom being out of the house almost every single day because she was just going to appointments with my dad, and then after surgery, she was always constantly going to visit him in the hospital, and there were times that she definitely took us kids with her, but just all the doctor's appointments post-surgery and stuff would be a lot to bring 6 kids to. So, just any kids to in general. But So we had a lot of babysitters and family come into town, which was fun, but also it was a lot because I was just like, I just want my parents back. Like, I love my grandma, but I don't want my grandma to be the one taking care of us all the time. Yeah, so that just was really hard. And I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself, especially as the oldest, to take care of my siblings and to even be perfect, quote unquote, just because I was like, man, my parents are going through so much. Like, I can't put anything else on their plate. Which definitely has impacted me into adulthood, like not in good ways either. And so still trying to work through that and process through those things. But my dad didn't have any tumors after that first initial one until January of 2023 was when we found out that he had another, because with terminal cancer, like brain cancer, it never actually leaves. So there's no remission with glioblastoma brain cancer, because even if the cancer cells don't form into a tumor, it still is there. And so it came back as a tumor. Then he got surgery, a second surgery right after Easter, because I remember I drove back for Easter. My parents were leaving the next day to go to Chicago, because that's where his doctors were. And so he had surgery again. And he was doing okay, like definitely not as great as the first time, but I mean, he was also 10 years older. And then October of 2023, we found out that treatments were no longer working. And so they took him off chemo and radiation. And he tried Avastin one time and he completely lost all his motor skills. Like, he wasn't able to talk, he wasn't able to walk. And he has always had a thing where he wanted quality over quantity. And so for him, he's like, Avastin would not give him the quality of life that he wanted. And so he would rather die sooner than not be able to communicate with people or not be able to just enjoy life. And so they decided to stop that treatment as well. And so then I ended up moving back home my last semester of school because we were told, like, hey, like, your dad probably has 6 months to live. Which, I mean, he was already a walking miracle because we had been given a 6 to like year and a half-ish estimate, like the first initial go around with his cancer. And he had outlived that by, what would that have been? 8-9 years at that point when his second tumor came back. And so yeah, I moved back home, like did my last semester of school online, and then he just turned around one day and like kept getting better. Like, he was in a wheelchair and was immobilized for months. He had my mom while he was still living, because we all thought he was gonna die by like March or April of 2024. And so he had my mom go and buy him a plot of land and a tombstone and like all of that stuff, funeral arrangements and stuff out of the way, because he's like, I don't want you to have to do this if I was to die, because he already knows the grief that you'd be going through. And so he was like, let's just get all this done while I'm still alive. And so we literally had almost everything just planned out, so then it would make that transition just a little bit easier. And then, yeah, one day he just turned around and started getting stronger, and he started walking, and he's still around to this day somehow, which is totally a miracle and totally the Lord, because none of us would have expected it. And it just is amazing to see the Lord just bless our family with that.
Wow. What a story, with a lot of twists and turns. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Yeah. I mean, from that initial diagnosis, like you said, that first phone call, to now, like, so much has changed.
Yes.
And there's been hope and sorrow, and then
Yeah.
hope and sorrow and hope and sorrow. Like, kind of I'm sure, a difficult process of knowing, okay, this is coming to a close, and you're kind of like coming to terms with that, and then being pleasantly surprised. Like, that does, I'm sure, take a lot of emotional strength to navigate.
Yeah. Lots of anticipatory grief that I did not know was a thing until, especially this last go around, when, because, being 11 compared to being, what was I, like 20 is a very different, you're way more emotionally just mature. You're older, so you understand things a lot more, because even at 11, it's like I understood things, but not to the degree that 20-year-old me would have back in 2024.
Yeah, no kidding. So are you 20, 21 right now?
I'm 21. I'm 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, that is a lot to go through from like a young age.
Yeah.
And kind of carrying that with you. So were you anticipating like getting married and just knowing that, okay, my dad's not going to be here for this?
Yeah. That was something that I never expected. I mean, I didn't even know that he was going to be there for my like high school graduation. And so that was something that I really had to wrestle through a lot, was like, my dad won't be there to walk me down the aisle. And like, I definitely was a little girl who like always was like, everything was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for my wedding day and get to meet like the man who like the Lord has for me and stuff like that. Like I was definitely like a little princess, just can't wait for my wedding day type of little girl. And so that was something that middle school me had to wrestle through a lot, even high school me, of just being like, man, my dad may not be able to be there. And especially with that last year when treatment stopped working and stuff, that was something, especially since I was dating my now husband at the time, I was just thankful that my dad had gotten to meet him. But even then it was like, I don't think that my dad's going to make it for my wedding, which praise the Lord he did. And he was able to walk me down the aisle and stuff. But that was something that my husband and I had to talk through of like, well, when are we going to get married? Because if my dad dies in April, we can't get married in December because I don't know how I would be and stuff like that.
Right.
So that was just something that even in the last year we had to work through and talk about. So
yeah. Oh my goodness. Walk me through what it was like actually having your dad, not only at the wedding, but like walking you down the aisle, doing the father-daughter dance. What was going through your mind?
I mean, I loved it. It was definitely because I mean, I feel like with weddings, everything's just such a blur the whole day. Because even looking back, I remember certain things, but then other things, I can't remember that because it's just so much just emotion and stuff is happening. Him walking me down the aisle was super bittersweet. And it just was so fun just being able to be like, wow, my dad is here. Because I even had talked with my husband about maybe his father being the one to walk me down the aisle if my dad were to have passed. And so it just was really nice that I didn't have to have anyone else but my dad be the one to do that. The father-daughter dance. Somehow I did not cry. I think I let out one single tear the entire thing. But initially back in 2023, when we first found out that my dad's cancer was back before his second surgery, my mom had actually seen from one of our friends who her husband also passed a glioblastoma, Amy Shaw, who's super big in the Inheritance of Hope community as well. They did a like sessional as well with their dad. And all the girls dressed up in wedding dresses, and he walked them all down the aisle and did their daddy-daughter dances and stuff, just so then the girls got that. And so my mom actually did that with us as well before my dad's second surgery. And so I did the same song and everything that I did for that at my real wedding. And my dad started, he broke down and started sobbing, probably 30 seconds in. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the room but mine. Which again, I do not know how because I am such a crier. So that was just a very emotional thing for me. And I sobbed when I saw the photos though. Like in my wedding video, I cried through all of that. But in the moment, it was like, I just got to stand there and dance with my dad and then got to give him a great big hug. And it was such an amazing thing because it was something that I wanted so badly, yet did not think at all that I was going to get. And so that was such a blessing from the Lord that I did get to have that opportunity.
And almost thankfully, we're so busy with the wedding day, or, you know, you're just kind of not fully soaking in every single moment. That might almost have been a good thing so that, you know, your makeup wasn't all messed up. You weren't like an emotional wreck for the rest of the day. But to have those videos and the pictures after the fact to reminisce on is such a gift, and one it sounds like you would have never anticipated.
Yeah, not at all. That's, I think, something that I really, because like I said, my wedding day was the biggest thing that I imagined growing up. And so for me, that was such a hard thing, was being like, wow, my dad more than likely will not be here. And somehow, due to the grace of God and just his hand on my dad's life, like he was.
Oh, man. So how was it hearing? I mean, you were 11, so that's young. And I'm sure, you know, at that age, like you said, you're not fully aware of everything happening, all the dynamics. But how did your family respond to the news that your dad would only have 6 months to a year and a half left to live?
My parents actually blew me away with their faith. on how they handle that. I can't really remember how my siblings reacted necessarily. I know I kind of at first tried to stay super strong, and I was like, I'm not gonna cry when I heard the news. But then my dad said something that completely broke me down, and I was like, okay, I'm crying now. But it was actually amazing because I feel like the Lord is so gracious in how he prepares people for different things, because the months leading up actually to my dad's cancer diagnosis, the Lord had just been showing them over and over and over again who he was. And my dad was even at church teaching through Sunday school, like teaching through the attributes of God. And he taught on the Lord's sovereignty the week before he found out about his cancer. And then the week after we found out, he had to teach on like the Lord's goodness and stuff like that, to where he was like, God was just constantly reminding him like, hey, I know that you're going through a big trial right now, but I got you. I'm sovereign and I'm still good. And none of this is out of my control. Like, I know exactly what I'm allowing to happen to you right now. And it was actually funny because the Lord had laid it on my parents' heart, just like the sufferings of other Christians around the world. And so they were actually, for the year of 2015, every month was going to be something different. They're like, for the month of, I'm thinking it was April, we weren't going to do air conditioning. Or for the month of October, we weren't going to do heating. And then for like the month of August, we weren't going to drive in our car except to go to church. And just things like that, to where like we as a family would kind of be able to see just the privilege that we have here living in America, but also to know what kind of a lot of our brothers and sisters around the world are facing. And we actually were eating rice and beans. My mom found a ton of different recipes of rice and beans from around like different countries. And so that's what we were eating in the month of February. And so at first, when we found out that my dad had a grand mal seizure, my mom's like, oh my gosh, has he not been getting the proper nutrients? Like, did we end up doing something to where his blood sugar was tanking? She was just like, oh my gosh, am I killing my husband by feeding him?
Oh no.
But then we found out it was cancer. Mom's okay, so it wasn't the rice and beans. But yeah, so I feel like the Lord, just even with putting that on their hearts, was preparing them for the suffering that we were going to be facing. But yeah, so their faith definitely was super inspirational to even me as a 11-year-old, of just seeing just how, even though their whole world was shaped upside down, because my dad was 38 when he was diagnosed. And so, I mean, even as a 38-year-old, you still think you're invincible against everything. So I know that had to have been crazy to hear, oh, hey, by the way, you have a terminal illness at such a young age. So
yeah. And was there any signs leading up to it that something was going wrong?
So he was getting more tired, and his speech, he seemed to have to think a little bit harder on what to say, but none of us picked up on it because he was a tax accountant. And so it was during busy season. And so we all were like, oh, well, he's just exhausted because he's working crazy hours, because he was a senior manager at his firm too. So he was at work from like 5 a.m. till 6 p.m. every single day. And some days on Saturdays, just because it's busy season. So we just were all like, oh, he's just tired because it's the crazy tax seasons. But besides that, we really had nothing besides than that seizure.
I hear that a lot, where it just catches people off guard, and it's a seizure or it's something that was just so shocking.
Yeah.
And then your world kind of changes ultimately. Well, I know you shared about the rice and bean story, but I would love to hear if you have another humorous story comes to mind of something unexpected and just funny happened along the way.
I mean, so our like go-to funny story that we always share as a family is, so after surgery, my dad, so a lot of times post-brain surgery, especially with the left frontal lobe, because that's a lot of your speech and communication as well as your movement part of your brain, they just expect, they're like, hey, you may not walk or talk after surgery for a bit. Well, my dad was able to walk and talk. Well, according to the doctors, he was. He was able to say like water and wiggle his toes, which to them is like, this is great. But to my mom, it was like, what do you mean he can walk and talk? He can't even say my name, but it's just different in the medical world versus like just patients viewing things. But with his lack of speech, he couldn't really say a lot. And so, but it was funny because he couldn't say his name or my mom's name or ask for a glass of water, but he could say anesthesiologist. And then
That's a big word.
Yes, it is a very big word. And it's funny because it's at times, it's almost like his logical part of his brain and his creative part of his brain have switched because the right side is more creative while the left side is more of the logical part. So with him now missing like a quarter of his left side of his brain, his right side has had to take over a lot. And so he'll just say really big words out of nowhere at times. Instead of saying, I'm trying to think of a good example. But it's like, like those vocabulary words you learned in elementary and middle school? You're like, I'm never going to use these words in real life. He uses those now at the most random times because he won't say the simple word. He'll say like a super complex vocabulary word. And it was really funny.
Yeah.
But because of his limited speech, like he would tell people a lot that they're dismissed, like when he was like ready to like not have guests in his room anymore. And then even one time during like speech therapy, his speech therapist was like, all right, Wayne, like tell me like a couple sports. And he was like volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, cricket, table tennis. And my mom was like, what? Like,
all of the obscure ones.
Yeah, which it kind of makes sense because his boss's son played cricket. But my mom's like, where did you get table tennis from? Like, why not just regular tennis or football or baseball?
Right.
It was so funny.
Probably it's just a lot of entertainment for your family of just keeping up with, wait, what did Dad just say?
Yep. No, definitely.
That's hilarious. And I'm sure, like I said, just probably very entertaining, not only for you guys, but medical staff or whoever is being told they're dismissed.
Huh.
What about a moment of real heaviness or darkness that you experienced along the way? Which I'm sure there are many.
Yeah. I was going to say there definitely are many. I don't know. I would say probably the biggest one was recently just finding out that treatment wasn't working because I was away from home and I hadn't seen anyone since I had left for school. And we were actually visiting my husband's family at the time. It was my first time ever seeing them. And all of a sudden I got a call from my mom and I wasn't able to pick it up because we were out and about. And she texted me and she goes, hey, we really need to talk. And I was like, that can't be good if she's sending me that. And so we get back to his house and my mom tells me, and that was just devastating because it was like, oh, okay. Because you always have it in the back of your head where you're like, this is actually cancer and it's actually bad. But I feel like because we had lived with it for so long, that it's almost like my brain couldn't actually process like, oh, this could actually kill him. This is actually something super duper bad. Because I had seen the side effects of it, but I never saw the actual decline in the actual like near death that we got those few months after I moved back from school, where he was getting closer to death. And it was like, oh, wow, this is actually super close. And this is actually something super real that we're probably going to be dealing with. And so I'd say that was probably, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, like the darkest moment.
Yeah, especially because it sounds like there was a huge gap between the first surgery and that first initial diagnosis. And then a lot of times, it's almost easier to like just face a hard season and then be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
But to have this like lingering, is it going to come back? Is it not? And then having like such a quiet time and then for it to come back, it's just, I would imagine that's so devastating.
No, it was. And it was always hard too because it was one of those things where we had to always keep a very healthy balance of, oh, well, my dad could be completely healed because we had no way of knowing, but it also could just be dormant like it actually was. And so it's so hard when people are like, oh yeah, your dad's completely healed of his cancer. And it's like, but we don't actually know that. That's the thing with this cancer is that we can never know. And so I'd say that was also just super hard, was that people, especially who aren't in the cancer community, they definitely were, it wasn't like they were trying to say anything wrong, but it just is that they just can't comprehend the actual like unknown that comes with it.
Yeah, we often hear that people want to help, but they aren't sure.
Yeah.
Like, so what are some things that people have said or done that have not been helpful? And then what are some things that people have said and done that have been helpful?
Yeah. People definitely are well-meaning when they say this, especially in church and stuff like that, of just being like, oh, well, the Lord like has completely healed him of his cancer. And do I believe that the Lord can completely heal anything? 100%. God is not a God to be put in a box. He definitely is a great physician and a God of miracles. However, I also am aware that death is something that we face on this side of eternity every single day. I can't I can't put my hope in a miracle and not in the Lord. And so I feel like that was always something super hard that people will well-meaning in, but it's like, but that's not 100%. That's not necessarily true. And then I think another thing is like people who just expect me to come to them and give them updates about how my parents are doing. Because even my mom was diagnosed then with uterine cancer the year of 2023. So we were finally going uphill with my dad because the first half of 2023 was all my dad. We kind of were like going really downhill. Then we like spiked uphill all of a sudden. We're like, cool. And then the summer kind of studied out. And then a few days before I was leaving for my senior year of college, my mom was diagnosed with uterine cancer and found that out a few days before I left. And so that was super duper hard because I was like, oh my gosh, now both of my parents have cancer. And I had friends who were well-meaning, but they would almost get upset at me because they would find out things from my mom's blog instead of me. And it's like, guys, like I'm not just going to randomly just bring up, hey, this is what's happening in my parents' life. Because it's just weird for me. It's weird for me to like come up to somebody just out of blue and just dump a ton of stuff on them. Unless you ask me how people are doing, I'm not just gonna randomly come up to you and be like, oh, by the way, this and this and this happened, unless it was super big. I did tell a lot of people before my mom posted on her blog that they ended up finding another growth in her. And so they upped her staging to a stage 3 uterine cancer just because her doctor wanted to be able to attack it with as much as they could treatment-wise, since she knew that my dad also was a terminal cancer patient. But that was just really hard, I would say. Just having people in my life who were expecting me to be the one to communicate things when it was really hard for me to be, because there was a lot of stuff that I even compartmentalized, like unhealthily, where I would read something and be like, cool, and then I would shove it down and forget about it, just because I didn't healthily work through things. And then things that people did that I liked, I always appreciate when people are just willing to sit with me and just allow me to open up in my own time about stuff and just to not ask a ton of questions, but rather just ask one and then just let us sit in silence, even if we have to. And then even just friends who would just like randomly text like, hey, I'm praying for you, or just send Bible verses and stuff like that always was super nice too, of just seeing that they're there for me and that they're wanting to actually be there, but not actually pushing for me to tell them stuff and things like that.
It sounds like the emotional energy to have to, notify all these different people is obviously really draining. And so if other people take the lead and without expecting a certain level of information or relational currency, just show up and say, hey, I'm thinking about you, and kind of taking the burden of the emotional energy and initiation is really helpful. Something you said was so profound. I feel like I just want to like put it on the wall or something, but I might butcher this, but something like, I can't expect and hope in a miracle and not in the Lord. Is that what you said? Or
yeah, it was something along those lines. Yeah. Because that's I think been the biggest thing for me, especially recently, that I have, especially I would say since college, because I feel like there's a lot of, especially in the church today, there's a lot of stuff about, oh, well, if you just have enough faith, the Lord is going to heal you of everything. And it's just like, I don't think that that's biblical. I know countless strong believers who have died from cancer or from a heart attack or from other things like that. We just recently had a guy at our church who was super influential with my walk with the Lord, especially when it came to just healing from certain aspects of my life through different ministries that we had at church, who died of stage 4 lung cancer a few weeks ago. And it just was like, I know so many strong believers who definitely prayed for healing, but I feel like if we're expecting life to be easy and if we're expecting life to be painless, that's not what Jesus even told us was going to happen with the Christian life. And I think that it's an unhealthy expectation to have in this present world that we even live in, where if you don't die of cancer, you're going to die of something else. And I would not wish cancer on anybody. Like even the worst person who I could think of who's alive today. Like I wouldn't wish cancer on them because it's just such a bad thing. But I don't think that God's heart is for death for anybody. Like, and we even see that, like, death wasn't supposed to be something that was around. It wasn't until the fall that death entered into our world. And so I don't think God wants anyone to die of anything. Like, and so, like, cancer is just one of those things that it just is like, because we live in a fallen world, we're going to experience it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and knowing that the Lord is present through it all, He's near, and it's maybe not the thing that He's wishing on anyone or initiating, but that He is present and He is a helper. He is the great physician, but that doesn't automatically mean healing on the side of eternity. Well, we talk about that a lot at Inheritance of Hope, of how do we wrestle with that tension, because we know that the Lord is good and we also know things are hard. So what does that look like? And it's hard, and it looks kind of different for a lot of people, especially because all of the families we serve are impacted by terminal illness, which is excruciating and painful and so difficult. And yet we can still say, like, yeah, there's joy in the midst of that, because we know we have this eternal perspective that there is more to the story.
Yeah.
So how did your family get connected and hear about Inheritance of Hope?
So going back to Amy Shaw, she actually was the one who told my mom, because they went on a retreat, I think in 2019. Yeah, I think it was 2019 they were served, if I'm not mistaken. And she's like, oh my gosh, Rebecca, you need to go and do this thing called Inheritance of Hope. The retreats were amazing. Like, you just need to get your family on one. And so we were supposed to be served April of 2020. But as we all know, March 2020, the entire world shut down for months. And so we were not able to go on our retreat. And so we actually weren't served by Inheritance of Hope until March of 2022. But I had actually gotten involved with Inheritance of Hope before that, because I helped volunteer on the like Hope at Home retreats that they did. It was like the online retreats that they used to do and offer during like the COVID era. And so I kind of was already like a volunteer with Inheritance of Hope. Then, we were served in March of 2022. Literally one of the best things I ever like experienced. I loved it. Like, I loved meeting other people my age who also had either a parent who was sick or is sick. Because at that time they were serving families whose parents had passed since over COVID. There were a couple families on the wait list whose parents had already passed at that point. And it just was fun, like, being able to just see Inheritance of Hope just in action, and just seeing just like the love and just the joy of Christ that every volunteer had on that retreat. And even it just was super fun, like going to Disney and Universal with my family and just making those fun memories. And I actually am now a family volunteer with Inheritance of Hope, where I think I just did my 5th retreat in North Carolina this last month in April, and I love it. I love volunteering. I love being able to give back and just serve a family that's facing something similar like what mine is going through. And then I also did legacy videos. So I was a legacy video coach.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about legacy videos? Because it's so accessible. Anybody can, everybody should, whether or not there's a diagnosis in the family, it's a resource available to all. So anyone who's listening to this podcast episode, what would you tell them about legacy videos and why they should make one?
I would say, first and foremost, none of us are promised tomorrow. I mean, even my dad's neurologist told him, he goes, Blaine, everyone has a bus coming to hit them at some point in their life. The thing is that terminal patients see that bus coming, while then the rest of us don't. And so I would say, especially if you have kids or even grandkids, or even if you don't have kids yet, like, there are just so many amazing things that you can just even say to like your future self, or say to your kids, grandkids, your future kids, just even your future self, of just being able to document and just have a video for your loved ones to have. Because that's something that, like, knowing that once my dad passes, I have a video of him like saying, I love you, and like being able to talk, especially since it's been hard because he can't really communicate super well. Now it's like you can still have a conversation, but it's not anything like how it used to be before this last go around with cancer. And so it's like knowing that I have a video of being able to hear my dad speak like he used to is just so comforting to me, to know, like, once he does pass, it's not going to be the last time I see him or get to hear an I love you from him. And so especially for those who are facing a terminal diagnosis, I highly recommend it, because even if all that you do is get on and say that I love you to your kids, that's something that they're going to treasure for the rest of their lives. And I mean, like, we even have volunteers who, like, parents have since passed, and they say that that video is something that they go back to, like, all the time, just to be able to see their parent again. And it's just something so precious and something that I definitely think people should take advantage of.
You articulated that so beautifully, because it's such a priceless gift. And I think a lot of people struggle to even think about doing it in the first place. But then also, like, once you're on that call, what do I say?
Yeah.
Because it kind of forces us to face our own mortality. And so, like you said, we're not promised tomorrow. So why are we banking on having more opportunity to say something that we actually mean, instead of having it always documented and preserved in your voice with your mannerisms? Like, that is a priceless gift. And I think some people have this notion that I have 45 minutes to convey everything I need to say and capture my legacy. And it's like, it can be a 5-minute video where you just say, I love you. This is what I think about you. And that could be it. You don't even have to share any stories if you don't want. So it's so accessible and it's so worth it. We've never heard anyone say, I regret making one. But we do hear the opposite of, like, man, my person just died and I wish that they got around to doing this. And it's such a helpless feeling, because it's like, yeah, I know, I wish everyone has this gift, you know? And the nice thing is that is a free resource, as is all Inheritance of Hope resources. From your perspective, not only as a family served, but now like a very involved volunteer, what would you say to people who have donated to Inheritance of Hope? Like, what has their impact, or what impact has their generosity had on you personally? How have you seen that money in action?
Yeah. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has donated to Inheritance of Hope, because honestly, coming both as someone who has been served and getting to receive that, but also someone who now is utilizing your resources, and both having been a legacy video coach and being a family volunteer and going on multiple retreats, is that your money is what makes us be able to do what we do for these families. Because I just know, even for myself, like, my family was able to, not that we weren't open before, but it was like Inheritance of Hope, because of the different groups and just the way the facilitators ask questions and just facilitate discussion. I feel like we were able to be a ton more open about even just our thoughts and feelings towards cancer, which was truly remarkable. And I feel like a lot of my siblings, especially those who weren't really processing things healthily, were able to start processing things a lot more healthily, and were able to open up to my parents more, and were able to get the help that they needed, like through therapy and stuff that they were initially closed off to. And then I would say, on the flip side, as a family volunteer, being able to see a child go from super reserved and closed off to, by the end of the weekend, being a completely different kid, because they've learned, I'm not alone in this struggle. There's other kids my age. Like, it's the most heartbreaking but amazing thing to see kids in the kids group be like, oh my gosh, your mom is also sick, so is mine. And they have something that they get to relate to another kid that most of the time they cannot relate to any other kids anywhere else, whether that's in like their sports, their school. Like, IOH is just something that we have an ability to be able to connect kids and connect adults to each other in a way that they can't anywhere else. And I would say Inheritance of Hope is honestly a one-of-a-kind organization. Like, I don't know of anything else that is like it, and I think that it is legitimately changing lives for the best, whether that be just through the gospel or even just a loving smile of a volunteer who takes care of a family for the weekend. Like it literally is helping families get through this and to be able to find the joy in the hope of Christ. But not even that, just being able to be like, oh, like, there's more to life than just this cancer diagnosis. And how are we going to make lasting family memories that when we look back down the road, we're not going to regret how we spent our time, even despite facing cancer or even ALS? How are we going to make these memories?
Looking for resources, encouragement, and connection with others that truly get it? The Hope at Home app from Inheritance of Hope was created just for families like yours. Access blog posts and tools on hope, self-care, legacy, and more. Jump into group chats with others who understand what you're facing. Stay current on events and register easily, all in one place. Download Hope at Home today and stay connected to a community that cares.
Right. And to not have to worry about, hey, money is so tight right now. We have all these medical bills. We're navigating insurance. And then now, what are we going to just spend a ton of money to take 6 kids to Disney? That's probably not a priority. So to do that and to have these video resources, online support groups, and know that you don't have to worry about it because other people are so generous, not only with their time, but their money too. It's so humbling to just see the whole picture. And like, you have a unique perspective because you were on the receiving end, and, you know, giving these resources now too is just, it's such a beautiful thing to see and be a part of.
Yeah.
Well, to close up this episode, I'm going to ask a question we ask all our guests, and that is, whose legacy has been impactful for you? So that could be in their life, in their death, just someone who you are carrying on their legacy by the way they lived.
Yeah. I would say definitely my dad. He's not going to be my only answer, though. My dad definitely, I mean, just seeing him, just in his faith over the last, 10 plus years now that he's been a terminal cancer patient, has just been so inspiring, and how he just is able to still laugh and just have fun. But I would also say someone who got me through a lot, especially the first go around with my dad's cancer, was Corrie ten Boom. And if you don't know who that is, she was a Christian in the Netherlands during World War II. And the Netherlands was one of the countries that the Nazis occupied during World War II, and her family converted their attic into a hiding place for Jews. Somehow they got tipped off to the Gestapo, and almost her entire immediate family died in either a concentration camp, or her father didn't even make it to the concentration camp because he died while in prison. And she was really the only one who survived. And she watched her sister Betsy succumb to the flu while they were at Ravensbrück, and just her faith and just her courage through that whole thing, and how she never denounced the Lord once, was so inspiring to me as a kid facing nothing like what she faced, because we both suffered differently. But just seeing her faith through that, and even at the end of her autobiography, The Hiding Place, which I highly recommend anyone read, she even, while she was telling her story at a church one time, old German soldier who actually was one of the German soldiers at the concentration camp came up to her, and she in that moment had to decide whether or not she was going to forgive him for everything that he put her and her sister through, and she did. And it was just a beautiful story of just how the Lord, even in something so dark as a concentration camp under Hitler and in Nazi Germany, she was able to see past that and see just the human being that God created in his image. And something she even writes in a different book is that life is like a tapestry, or an embroidery, if anyone does embroidery. And it's we typically don't see the beautiful finished product. We only see the messy stitching side, in which if you ever seen any sewing project, one side is an absolute mess, well then the other side is beautiful. And a lot of times we don't get to see the beautiful side until heaven, but we just have to trust that the Lord, despite all the messiness that we see, is working out something beautiful. So she definitely was someone who has impacted me a lot.
Oh, I love that. I'm not actually sure if I've read The Hiding Place, but I read A Tramp for the Lord, which is another book. I don't know if that's the tapestry one, but oh my gosh, I feel like so much inspiration came from that. And like you said, the suffering was different. But just seeing someone live their life and faiths out so well in their suffering is way more, inspiring and motivating than someone who has a perfectly calm, comfortable life and never leaves the comfort zone. It's that's not what the Lord is calling us to. We are to live out our faith in all circumstances. And so I even hope that for your life as well, in the midst of a lot of suffering from a young age, that other people will see, man, I love how Abigail lives out her life, and I'm inspired to keep in my faith because of how she's doing that in suffering. So thank you for living that out well and spending this time with us today. I know people will be really touched by what you had to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. I loved it.
up for breakfast dates with Dad. Mom helped us pick the outfit, then ice cream. We always had the most fun. On Christmas Eve we'd leave to get pizza right after church. Read the Christmas story, open gifts. We always were the most loved. Movie marathons and chocolate shakes on New Year's Eve. Dad's stories at the table, buffaloes and everything. See you later, alligator, we'd all yell from the front door. After a while, crocodile, Dad answered back once more. Knew every morning God's mercy never fails. When our hearts are happy, when our minds are still, Christ is the anchor. We are never alone, so we'll keep singing till you welcome us home. The day the word that no one wants, glioblastoma, came, Dad fights, we pray through ups and downs, 10 years into this day. Some nights feel dark and pain runs deep, the weight too much to bear. But God has always seen us through and shows us He is there. New every morning, His compassions never fail. When our world is crumbling, still our hearts are held. Christ is the anchor. We don't fight on our own, so we'll keep running till you welcome us home. Movie nights and travel, West Coast sun and winding way. Mom's daily devotions, Dad's voice when he prays. These are things we'll always hold and thank the Lord above, who gives us perseverance, faith and truth and hope and love.